Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. And again, thank you for bearing with me with the schedule change. I apologize about that, but it happens. So today we're going to talk about Miriam. Miriam Hanaviah, Miriam the prophetess, is a fascinating individual that there's so much to learn from. I was thinking originally of maybe splitting her up with Rus and Esther. But then we decided we're going to give a full class just on Miriam. And hopefully next week, which will be our grand finale, we'll do a little wrap up and we'll talk about probably Esther and Rus, probably primarily Esther, regarding other famous Jewish leaders and how we could be the next Jewish leader. So let's focus on Miriam a little bit. First and foremost, right? Miriam, what does the name mean? What does Miriam mean? So you're going to tell you, we didn't start this question off when we started with Abraham, right? We didn't start this question when we spoke about Moshe, right? Or King David. Why are we asking this question by Miriam? And the answer is because the name is very significant to what her direction and how she did some of her leadership. But we're going to, and let me expand, because she also has another name. So what does Miriam mean? And again, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to comment in the chat box or write it on Facebook Live. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions during the class. So Miriam, it really means mar, bitter, right? Miriam, the name is significant for being bitter. And the commentaries want to know why did she get such a name, right? We always joke. My daughter, as you all know, right? Most of you know, her name is Miriam. Right, we always say, you're sometimes you're a little bitter, huh? Right? It's not a joke, but no, God forbid, she's a great girl, right? She's probably going to kill me for speaking about her on the class, especially that it's out there. But Miriam means bitter. That's what Miriam means. The question is, what's the significance that Miriam's name means bitter, right? Or doesn't mean bitter? We know Abraham is Avamon Kayim, the father of all the nations, right? And it fits into what we spoke about, but we didn't delve into it. What's the significance of Miriam's name being bitter? And we'll get back to it soon. We're not going to answer the question right now, but we're going to get back to it soon. What I do want to start off with is how the Torah first introduces Miriam to us. Very interesting. The Torah introduces Miriam, right, with a totally different name. And the Midrash tells us, the Talmud elaborates on this, and that the name of Pua, who is one of the midwives that the Torah introduces, Pua was Miriam, right? So the Torah says like this, and the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whose name was Shifra, right, and the other was Pua. Now Shifra is known as Yocheved, who was Miriam's mother, right? And the other is Pua, right, who's Miriam, right? Who the Torah, the Talmud and the Midrash tells us is Miriam. So the question is, why, right, does the Torah call her Miriam? Why does the Torah introduce Miriam to us as Pua? Why does she introduce us to Pua? What does Pua mean, right? Right, so no jokes. Right, Midrash says from poo-poo. Right, there's a Yiddish tradition. It's a sort of a thing that mothers say their kids. Probably more Bubba's, the grandparents. Right, you might have heard. Some of your grandparents might have said, they might say poo-poo, right, or things like that. Right. So what's the idea? Right, because it says Pua, she would, every newborn, right, she would go ahead and go poo-poo and help the baby out. That's where Pua comes from, right? And the Torah goes ahead and tells us that the midwives defied Paro, right? They defied Paro by going ahead and saving the babies. What did Pharaoh want? What did Paro want? Paro wanted the babies all to be thrown into the river, right, and get rid of the Jewish babies. And these midwives defy them. They would say the mothers are not, they're not like typical ladies. They gave birth early, gave this, gave that, and came up with all the excuses, right? People are excellent giving excuses. At least this time it was for a good thing. They gave excuses for a good reason. And they would go ahead and they say defied Paro, and they would say and Pua comes from, because she would comfort the baby when the baby was born and try to quiet it down and take care of the baby. That's what the idea of Pua is. So the commentators want to know what's the idea that the Torah introduces Miriam to us, the first time it introduces Miriam by her name Pua. By her name Pua. What's the significance of this, and what are we supposed to learn? And not by her regular name as Miriam, as it will be known only later. So I think this is an excellent place to start with really understanding Miriam's leadership and understanding what we're supposed to learn. There's so much we're supposed to learn, but one of the many things that we're supposed to learn from Miriam, and again, back to what we've always spoken about, that there's a consistent thread throughout all the Jewish leaders of concern for others, right? And taking away and being selfless, right, for others. And thinking about others, worrying about others, and not doing their leadership for themselves. And we went through all the different leaders up until now where we showed this. Avraham Avinu, right? We showed it by Moshe, we showed it by King David last week, right? And we see this right now again by Miriam, right? We see this by Miriam. Why was she called? How does the Torah go ahead and introduce her? Not by Miriam, not by her real name, her name that's given to her by her parents, and how she's known for the rest of the Torah, and for the rest of history, right? We know Miriam very well. And how many people do a Jewish trivia, guys? Go ahead and you'll win, right? Most probably. What other name was name of Miriam, or whose name was Pua? Right? Most people won't know. But the Torah is teaching us something very important. The Torah is telling us that Miriam's prime concern, right, was always about other people. The concern for other people. It doesn't make a difference if it was a baby, right, or if it was an adult. And primarily a baby, where a baby can't do anything to you. And normally, most of the time, right, babies, don't necessarily remember their midwives, right? How many of us know who our midwives were? So you say, oh, doing it to save them, and then later on, they're going to be grateful to us. How many people actually remember their midwives? Miriam was selfless and going ahead and making sure that the baby survived and helping out the Jewish mothers to make sure they survived. That's where her name Pua comes from, right? And that's why, right? That's why the Torah introduces us as Miriam first and foremost as Pua, to remind us that we have to be thinking about other people. We have to be concerned about other people. A good leader, whatever that is, if you're a head of a synagogue, you're a head of your household, you're a boss over other people, you're a committee chair, you're whatever it is. You have a bunch of friends, and you're sort of the one that's sort of leading your group of friends. The prime role of a leader, the prime role of someone that is supposed to be helping other people, is to be helping other people. Is to be concerned for them, not for yourself. So if you have a group of friends, or you have a group of things, and they follow you, make sure that your leadership is in a way that everything that you do and everything that is talked about is the concern of other people and not to benefit yourself. Not to benefit yourself. Right? 1 second, we have a person here. Let's kick him off. We just got bombed. Where's my thing? Remove. Okay. Look at that. I guess we made it into the world. We just got Facebook Zoom bombed. Yeah. Okay, that happens, right? Just a constant reminder that we always have to be strong within ourselves and to constantly strengthen ourselves. That unfortunately there's these people, right, that want to hurt us. So let's just be strong and make sure that we stay strong and not allow any of these things to go ahead and to hinder us from continuously doing what we're supposed to be doing. So let us not let this to disturb us and to stop us from doing what we're supposed to be doing. Okay, so back to our discussion, right? So that is one idea, right? One idea of Miriam. Right? One idea of Miriam is, and the Torah is introducing to us that we have to remember, right? That we have to be thinking about other people. Now, there's this beautiful idea that pua also means another thing, and it's beautiful. It ties into what just happened to us, right? There's another idea, right? The concept's like this. Pua also means to hofia, to stand up, right? Miriam and her mother Shifra, right, and Yocheved, but Miriam also had this guts of standing up to Pharaoh. Right? Now think about it. He's a king of Egypt, most powerful ruler of all times, and he's telling them to go ahead and kill the babies. Right? And he's standing up. They're standing up. It takes inner strength to make sure that you are doing good not for yourself, but for other people. That's what it takes. It's inner strength to make sure that you do good for other people, right, and not for yourself. And that same strength of caring about other people, that same strength of taking care of the kids, is the same strength that held Miriam and allowed her to stand up and to overcome, right, to overcome the fear of dictators, the fear of people trying to create fear amongst us, and to stand up and to do the right thing. And that's something that we really, really have to reflect on. Right? Really have to reflect on and think about that. Most of us want to do good. Right? Most of us are out there wanting to do good. Now, sometimes we do good, but we have to make sure that we cover our own backs and we do good what society's telling us to do good, what we think is good. Right? But we have to make sure that the good where we're doing is not good that will hurt other people at the same time. And we have to make sure that we have the strength to stand up to people and to society that wants us to do things that are not the right thing, to hurt other people. And that's really the power of Miriam, right? As we're starting to talk about Miriam, right? The power of Miriam, one of the major powers of Miriam, right? As we see, is that she had both of these strengths, but one really comes from the other. Number one, she had the strength of being able to take care of the kids, babies, and not be worried or concerned about, everything, not be worried but concerned about how is this going to be for her or good for her or blah, blah, blah. And at the same time, the strength of also standing up to power, which is a tremendous, tremendous thing. Now we find the same concept by Miriam, that she had the strength to stand up, right? We find it where the Talmud tells us she stood up to her father. Now, who was her father? Her father was Amram. Amram was the leader of the Jewish people, right? His son Moshe took over, but he was the leader of the Jewish people during the exile. Now, Miriam was a mere 6 years old. How do we know Miriam was 6 years old? Because Miriam was only 6 years older than Moshe. And so Miriam was 6 years old, and she goes ahead and tells her father that, Dad, your decree is worse than Pharaoh's. Now, what was Amram's decree? And I don't want to get too off topic on this, but what was Amram's decree? Amram said, look, Pharaoh wants us to kill the babies. We can't have babies, right? We have to divorce our wife. We can't have babies, right? We can't do it because every time, right, we have babies, we're putting those kids into trouble. So she said, Dad, you're worse than Pharaoh because Pharaoh only made a decree against the boys, right? And you're making a decree against boys and girls because, I don't know, maybe he's a girl. So he went ahead and he listened to her and he remarried his wife. And from that listening to his daughter, Moshe came out. And Moshe was born early. They were able to hide him and move onwards. But we see again this energy, this power of Miriam, this inner strength as a 6-year-old. Can't even imagine. But she did it with respect, of course, and she talked with respect. But her caring about other people, her desire to make sure to help other people was so strong that it allowed her to stand up and do the right thing when other people would have stood on the sideline, or other people would have said, I'm not getting involved. And that's extremely important in leadership and extremely important for all of us. We all have to remember, we all have to reflect on and say, hey, what are we doing? Number one, to make sure that we're helping other people. Number two, are we standing up to the norm, to what society says the norm is? Right? Are we standing up to what seemingly is people are saying is the right thing to do, or what we're getting pressured into doing, or we're getting pressured to say, or internally ourselves? We feel pressured not to do or yes to do. Are we strong enough to know, when we know what the right thing is, what we're supposed to eat, how we're supposed to talk, what we're supposed to do on Shabbat, how we're supposed to do our business? Are we strong enough to stand up to ourselves and say, I need to do the right thing, because that's the greatest chesed one could do. The greatest gift, the greatest thing you could do for yourself or for other people is by you becoming a better person and standing up and making sure that you do the right thing. That's one of the greatest things one could do. So that's one idea, sort of both sides of a coin. And therefore the Torah introduces us, Miriam, with the name Pua, to lay the groundworks of Miriam, who we're going to talk about, the prophetess, right? The other great things about Miriam, who sang the Song of the Sea for the ladies. What was her basis? What was her inner strength? What was her roots of how great she became? Was Pua. The kindness, the thinking about other people, and the ability to stand up and to say, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm not gonna follow the crowd, or I'm not gonna bend to the pressure of myself or my friends or other people and not do the right thing. So that's number one. That's something very important to remember. Okay, let's move on to another idea, right? Miriam, it says, after Moshe was born. Any questions? Okay, so after Moshe was born, right? After Moshe was born, we find that it says, and his sister stood from a distance to know what would happen to him, right? And it says, Vatamod Miriam, right? Achoso, right? Mitzad, to see in the reeds, to see what happened. And then we know the famous story, right? Miriam, Basia, the daughter of Pharaoh, is going out, right? And she saw the basket, and she reached out to grab it. One Midrash says her hand stretched out. It's not our discussion right now, right? But she got the baby and onwards, and then she had a Jewish midwife come and nurse him, and Moshe grew up in Pharaoh's house. But it says, and she stood on the side. What does it have to say that she stood on the side? What was Miriam doing standing on the side? Her parents put him in the thing, okay, and who knows what happens. And so the commentaries say something very interesting. The standing, what is the idea of standing? Of course, it's standing, but standing also means to say that you are standing. When we have a phrase, we have, you stand for your beliefs, right? You stand for your belief. That's the phrase. What does that mean? It means to say that you're firm. You have a belief. You believe that what's going to happen is going to happen. You're not budging, right? You're standing, and you want to see how things work out. You want to make sure that what you thought or what you implemented is going to work out. And therefore, Miriam had this prophecy. The commentaries say that she already at the age 6, she had this prophecy. That was what she was telling her father, right? That you have to get remarried. There's going to be another baby. The Messiah, Moshe, was going to come. Right? But she wanted to see what was happening. Not that she was doubting, but she just wanted to see how is God going to make sure that her prophecy was going to work out. She had true belief that what she implemented, what she said, and she was there to make sure that it worked out. Now, a lot of times we find leaders or people, right, that pretend to be leaders or try to be leaders, that implement things or say things, and then what happens? They're nowhere to be seen, right? To what's it called again? To make sure that it works out, or to make sure that what we want to implement, a new this, or in our community, or come up with this great idea and get people involved, and then what happens? They leave it to everybody else. Why is that? Because most times these people, right, they're not true leaders. They have good ideas, but they're not able to stand and see the process of whatever they decided to do or whatever they wanted other people's help. They can't see it through. They can't see it through. It's a lack of leadership. That's a lack of oneself. You're fluency. You're here. You're there. A leader can't be that way. A leader has to be able to see things through. You come up with an idea. You come up with to implement something. You have to see it through, and that was what Miriam was doing. That Talmud, Miriam stood on the side to see what happens, and not only that. After that, what happens? And what happened after that? She saw that Basia got her, and she was trying to nurse him with the non-Jewish midwives, and Moshe wasn't going to eat from the non-Jewish midwives. Another whole discussion. So what did she do? She went in and she said, "Oh, this baby is from Ephraim. I know a Jewish midwife. Can I help out?" Can you imagine going and just popping up and talking to the princess of Egypt, who doesn't know you, security guards, this, that? But no, she went ahead. She wanted to make sure that Moshe was taken care of. She was going to see this all through. Didn't allow things to deter her from seeing things through. That's a tremendous lesson of leadership. And something that as we all are trying to be better leaders, as we said, for ourselves, for our families, for our friends, for our community, for whatever your involvement with other people, is you have to make sure that you see things through. Don't just start something and then boom, let it drop. Doesn't mean to say you have to be micromanagement. That's not what it means. But you have to follow up and see how things are going. Do you need any help? Can I help out in certain things? Right? If you give a job over to someone, right? You give a lead position to someone, see how they're going, how they're doing. But you have to see things through. And that's a tremendous lesson in leadership. And Miriam, we see this in Miriam, that she saw things through, right? And she didn't just let it be. Okay, let's move on. We have about another 10 minutes. Right? So another idea of Miriam, and we might end a little early, right? Another idea of Miriam is, as we started off, Miriam's name is bitter. Right? Miriam's name is bitter. And we asked the question, why is Miriam's name bitter? So now let's get to her real name. Her real name is Miriam, right? Bitter. So why bitter? Why is that her name? Right? She sang the Song of the Sea. She took care of Moshe. Right? She was a sweetheart. She quieted the babies. What does it mean that she was bitter? So I saw this beautiful idea, right? That Miriam's name was bitter. It means to say that this Miriam's name encapsulated the status of the Jewish people during the greatest part of her lifetime. She expressed and represented her nation, feeling their pain, and yet at the same time encouraging them to prepare in every way for their biggest future and for their redemption. So what does it mean that Miriam's name was bitter? It doesn't mean, God forbid, that Miriam was bitter. And it's very important. Right? Names doesn't mean to say that it defines a person, but a name also could be of what they represent or what they're feeling or how they encapsulate what's going on around them. Miriam had the ability, and a true leader, Miriam had the ability to be able to truly feel the pain of everybody. Miriam was able to carry the yoke of all the Jewish people, of all the pain. Can you imagine how much pain there were? Right? The slavery for hundreds of years. Miriam was able to encapsulate, to take and shoulder all that pain. And that's what it means by Mara, by Miriam. There was a prophecy. The tradition tells us that when parents name their kids, it's sort of a prophecy is given, and the name represents the person. So that's what it means. Miriam had the ability to be able to do that, but at the same time, she was poor. She was known as poor because people would recognize what is she doing by all that pain that she's feeling from everybody? She's giving hope. She's giving hope. She's helping the children. She's calming them down. She's standing up to tyrants. She's standing up to what she believes. She follows things through. So on one hand, we have to be able to weigh this. We have to be able to feel the pain of everybody. We have to try to understand what people are coming through. Miriam didn't have it as hard as everybody else. She had it hard, but she came from the tribe of the Levites. Let's not forget. And the Levites were not in slavery to the extent of everybody else. They didn't have all the hard work because they never started off with it. And I don't want to get into that right now. But the Levites didn't have that. So she was not actually involved in that pain, but she understood their pain. She felt their pain. That's a leader. A leader has to understand what everybody around them, their friends, their family, their workers, their co-workers, their whatever it is that they're sort of taking by just their natural abilities or because of the position they were put in, has to understand everybody around them and what's going and how they feel and what it is. That is a leader. That was Miriam. And therefore, that's why her name was Miriam, not that she was truly bitter, but on the contrary, that she understood the pain of everybody else. And then she went ahead and did something about it. And that's why the Torah tells us her name was Pua. And we see that she stood through and she saw through. So that's another idea, an important lesson to learn from Miriam, that we have to follow things through. We have to make sure that we do things the way they're supposed to be. Now let's continue. Right? Let's continue. So there's a very famous idea, right? A very famous idea that there's three things that the Jewish people got, right, in the desert. Three main things, right? And they came because of the merit of three siblings, right? What a family. The Anana Ekava, the clouds of glory, right? They came because of Aaron. The manna from heaven came because of Moshe. And the water they drank, right? The water, the Be'er, the well, is known as Be'er Miriam, the well of Miriam, and it came in because of her merit. And to the extent that we call it Be'er Miriam, we don't call it Mana Moshe. We don't call it clouds of Aaron. And we call it Be'er Miriam, the Be'er, the well of Miriam, the water, right? That the Jewish people were able to drink and to feed animals and everything came because of the merit of Miriam. Because of Miriam. You see how great she was. Right? How great Miriam was that the Jewish people had water because of her. So the question the commentators ask, why did the water come because of Miriam? Why didn't it come because of Moshe? Why did Miriam get the man? Why not the clouds of glory? So of course everyone has a specific reason. So but why did the water come because of Miriam? So the Netziv, Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, right, known as the Netziv, who lived in the mid-1800s, right, early 1800s, and it says something very powerful. He's a fascinating individual, rabbi. His Torah thoughts are unbelievable. He says like this. He says, water corresponds to the character traits of kindness that spreads out to others. Right? How do we see this? We see the same concept that Rebecca, right? She drew water from the well, right, to feed animals, right? And that was a test. That was a test of Avram's servant, Eliezer, right? To know if this girl will be worthy for his master's son, for Yitzchak. The test was she going to feed him water? Right? So water represents the flow of kindness and spreading out, because water flows out. Right? Water comes and it goes wherever it goes. You pour water on a table, and wherever there's a little thing, it spreads out. Right? You have to retain water in. Kindness is supposed to spread out. That's what water. Kindness is supposed to spread out, and water is pure. And water doesn't really cost anything. Okay, I know we pay for water bills, right? Because you have to refine this, but natural water, you could go to the stream. It used to be before we polluted the world, but you could be able to get natural water, because being kind to people doesn't really cost you anything. On the contrary, you only gain. People think they lose out by being kind. They're helping someone out, their time, or this, or money, or being nice to people, spending time with someone. You're never going to lose by being kind to people. So Miriam was deeply nurturing and caring person, and as provided for the Jewish people in their spiritual and well as physical sense, she merited as well to provide the nation with a life-giving water 40 years. So it's so apropos for Miriam to have water, right? The be'er, the water has to come because of Miriam, because of, again, who she was, right? The what she was, as we explained, and this emphasis of kindness, of caring, of giving to other people. And it doesn't cost you anything to be kind to people. It doesn't cost you to be kind to people. At the same time, Miriam is the one that led the Jewish people with praising God and thanking God, right? The song of the sea, it says that after Miriam took the ladies and they sang and they played the harps and they sang, thank God, because Miriam had this attribute of standing up for what's right. And even though it's a little hard, a little uncomfortable, whatever it is, but doing what is supposed to be right, standing up, sticking to her guns, right? That is what Miriam represents. So the commentaries say, to the extent that at the end of days, right, the Be'er Miriam will come back. What does that mean exactly? I'm not sure. But Miriam's crucial in the Jewish history spans from the creation until the end of times. Right? Because tradition tells us that the Be'er Miriam, the well of Miriam, was created during the 6 days of creation. There was 10 things, and the Talmud tells us, that were created during the 10 days of creation. And one of those things was the Be'er Miriam, the well of Miriam. So Miriam's influence, the concept of kindness, the concept of giving, is the creation of the world, the redemption of Egypt, the final redemption. That's what it comes from. The ability to give forth, the ability to care about other people, the ability to stand up for what's right, the ability to really undertake other people's pain and to reflect on it and to think about it, and not to try to use it for your own benefit. That's what Miriam was. And that's what we have to reflect on. So let's just recap very quickly, and we'll end a little early, right? Let's just recap again. Number one, right? We have to remember, right? Pua. What was her name? Her name was Pua. What does it mean by Pua? Right? That she, what's it called again? She took care of the babies. And the Torah introduces us to Miriam that way, is to remind us that was a basis of who she was. She didn't care about if it was a baby, if it was an adult, if she's going to get anything out of them or not. She took care of them. Also means to stand up. She stood up to Paro. And that's what the Torah is trying to tell us. That combination is extremely important. You can be kind, but you also have to have a backbone. Right? You also have to be strong. You say no to Paro. No, you're not being kind. Paro wants you to do something. Right, just because someone wants you to do something negative doesn't mean that's not kindness. Kindness is not doing what everybody wants. Helping people out doesn't mean to say doing whatever everybody wants. It's doing the right thing, making sure that you're doing the right thing. That's what kindness is. And that's standing up. Miriam, next thing we learned, she followed through. Right? She stood, she saw what happened to Moshe. And that's an important thing we have to follow through. We can have an idea, right, for ourselves, right, to do something good, a mitzvah, whatever it is, to help other people out. We're in charge of a program, right? And we have other people, of course, you don't have to micromanage, but follow through, see how things are going. Don't just let things hang and rely on other people just to do everything. Follow through. Be there yourself to make sure it happens. And then we said Miriam also, the Be'er Miriam came because water represents flowing kindness, and it's free. It doesn't cost you anything, because that defines Miriam. She gave up everything. She didn't lose anything. And that is who Miriam is. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Sorry for the little interruption from unfortunate people that like to interrupt things and do anti-Semitic things. But we will stay strong and not allow us to deter us from doing the right thing. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.